Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora, and welcome to another Manawanui live stream. My name is Simon, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by two guests. Both are experts in the field of intensive interaction. So I have Galina and Keiron with me, and we were going to dive deep into the topic of intensive interaction and hopefully provide you at home with some practical ways to implement or to look out for opportunities to practice this with the disabled people in your life. So if you have a question at any time for myself or either of my guests, you know the drill. Please put your comments or questions in the comment section and I will read them out to them live on air. So we'll start with Keiron and then we'll move to Galina. But Keiron, please, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself to the audience at home.
Thanks, Simon. Keiron speaking here. Kia ora all. My name is Keiron. I am the Director of Intensive Interaction New Zealand. And I've been doing intensive interaction work for 20 years next year. So Intensive Interaction New Zealand was started in 2024. It is a branch of the global work that is done by Dave Hewitt from the Intensive Interaction Institute, Dave Hewitt and others. There is Intensive Interaction Australia. I work closely with Mark Barber, who is Intensive Interaction Australia. And we're here to support those people who struggle to communicate and connect with people. And we use intensive interaction as the major central approach for that. I'll break down intensive interaction very quickly, if I can. It's a very deep and philosophical approach. It is about working with those people who have communication impairment, cognitive impairment, socially isolated, struggle to use symbols or any sort of augmented communication to explain themselves or to express themselves. People who have complex autism are involved in that category as well. And it's using what they have in their kit or in their toolbox, what they're doing right now, what is meaningful for them. Using that as our way of getting into their world, being alongside them, learning to be social with them, and learning to teach them what Dave Hewitt calls the fundamentals of communication, which are such things as simply enjoying being with other people, developing the ability to attend to people, learning sequences of activities with people, such things as turn taking, learning how to share personal space with people, using and understanding eye contact, facial expressions, using non-verbal communication, all of that stuff that we take for granted. Some of our members of the community are not able to do that or have not been able to access that. We are hardwired or predisposed to social interaction. And if we don't have social interaction, we know that mental illness is a problem, isolation is a problem, and quality of life is a problem. So we're here, we're very passionate. Galina and I are both very passionate about this work. And I have gone into different places around the country to work with schools so far to support the uptake of this work.
Forgive me, I just put myself on mute quickly, sorry. Simon speaking. Thank you, Keiron, for your wonderful introduction. I will hand it over to your wonderful colleague, Galina. Please introduce yourself to those at home.
Simon, thank you, Galina speaking. So I have been working for about 4 years at Auckland Specialist School, and I'm teaching students specifically with profound and multiple learning disabilities. And 4 years ago, I was introduced intensive interaction. It was my first time when I actually started practicing I in the class in reading about this. And now after I would say a few years of less or more consistent work, we have seen quite good results in my class. Thank you.
Simon speaking, wonderful. Thank you very much. So, Keiron, over to you. We've talked a little bit about intensive interaction and what it can provide for those who have communication challenges. But if you were to explain the process of beginning that practice with a disabled person, what does that look like? So when you first meet somebody, you're going to engage with this this theory or methodology, what does that first session look like when you're trying to improve that person's communication skills?
Thanks, Simon. Keiron speaking here. I'll try and break that down into a nutshell. I usually spend about 6 hours on an introduction course for schools around the country. But if I'm looking at a learner for the first time, I'll look at what they are doing and what is meaningful to them. How do they occupy their time? What is important to them? What are they trying to make sense of? Just a couple of days ago, I was at Ferndale School and I was working pretty impromptu with a learner that was simply out in the garden or out in the back lot of the classroom and flapping grass, wandering around the fence line, sort of on and off the trampoline. So what I tend to do is I tend to observe for a while. The proper practice, if you're in a classroom, let's say if you want to make this an ongoing concern in your classroom, is to do lots of observation beforehand. What you're looking for is what we call a communication repertoire. What are the sort of things that you can jump in on, do with them, things that are meaningful for them? You're not going to be using your words or your sort of higher social ways of being, because that is not where they are at. The same as if you were working with, not working with, but you're with an infant for the first time. You would do exactly what the infant is doing. You would engage in the infant in a way that is enjoyable, reciprocal, engaging, and that's exactly what we're doing with intensive interaction. So for that learner at Ferndale School that was walking around the fence line, that was flapping grass, seemed to be having a reasonable time in their own world, I did exactly the same. I stooped. I'm kind of a tall guy, I'm about 6 foot. So I got down on his level, I picked up a piece of grass and I just came alongside him and started doing the same. That intrigues our people who are pretty much encased in their own worlds. And they are doing things to make meaning out of their time, out of the world, but it is something that we need to be mindful of and something that we need to say, hey, look, if it's meaningful for them, it has to be meaningful for us. So that's exactly what I did. He saw me, he noticed that I was not going to take him somewhere, not going to bring an object to him that he didn't want, not involve him in an activity that was perhaps more abstract than it should be, let's say. So he was intrigued. So I very gently and very slowly, with lots of time and pace and consideration, just came alongside him. And as that interaction progressed, we ended up actually very lovely moment, lying on the trampoline together. He was sort of alongside me. We would look at each other. We would share the same vocalizations, the same sounds. We made lovely hand touch contact. And so it's a very profound and I would say beautiful way of working with our learners. And when I'm talking about learners, I'm talking about schools, but this is equally evident in home situations, even more so, I would think. It's a way of really engaging them on their level. And by going into our young people or our adults' worlds, there is a process where through us, we are the conduit to sort of bring them closer to the sort of social community that we're part of. So it's bringing our isolated people, our adults, our young learners into the social world, and letting them know that they are meaningful to us. And therefore we get all these wonderful offshoots, which is they are more interested in people. They're less likely to develop sort of self-interest behaviors or harmful behaviors, purely because through the process of interaction, we are modeling, hey, this is the fun way to be, this is an enjoyable way to be. If you like doing this, we'll do this together. And it's along what we call a process central approach. So we're not looking for, in that interaction, I wasn't looking for a big goal. I wasn't looking for a major outcome. I was looking for some sort of engagement, and some sort of connection that was meaningful to us in the interaction. It wasn't meaningful to, let's say, linguistic thinking, wasn't meaningful to, let's say, symbolic thinking. It purely was about engagement and connection. And that is what we call the first learning, or what Dave Hewitt calls the first learning. And without the first learning, what our babies have when they come into the world, what happens naturally in the first 3 years, without that learning in place for our young people, our adults with cognitive or communicative impairments, they really are isolated. And this is, I suppose, a bit of a personal crusade for me, as much as a professional mission, to really get into their world and say, we're here for you. And through this process, we will support you, and you can support us to find out more about you. And we will come together into the social world that we know of and we sort of take for granted, really.
Simon speaking. Thanks, Keiron. Is there anything else, Galena, on the topic of that first meeting or that first interaction with somebody that you'd like to add to that Keiron was just expanding on?
As a teacher in the classroom, I would at well, when we started introducing intensive interaction at that moment, the students were quite isolated. I would say living in their own world or in their own bubble. And after some time was a strong emotional connection because they kind of opened up. They started responding to expressing themselves and responding to our voices, our presence, our gestures, and that was quite a significant moment. And then through that emotional connection, and we were things. For example, one of my students has Angelman syndrome, and one of the conditions is very short attention span. And I remember when I just first started doing intensive her attention was very short, and she could shift it just within a few seconds, I think. And now we have, I would say, quite miracle results. Now she can sustain her attention up to half an hour, which is great. And it's not happening only during intensive interaction sessions, but beyond.
Sorry, Simon speaking. I'll just jump in there. Looks like we've had some connections issues there. But Keiron, I'm assuming was about to say that the benefits of those sessions aren't confined to when you're practicing those models, but actually outside of the school and outside of that environment, that those benefits come through.
Absolutely. I think what Galena was about to go on to say is one of Dave Hewitt's fundamentals of communication, which is an increase in concentration and attention span. So that allowed Galena and her team to really support the learners to engage beyond the intensive interaction sessions. The intensive interaction sessions that Galena, for instance, is running in her classroom can run from 20 minutes to half an hour. So for our learners, they haven't had that before. You know, they've been sort of whisked through the day, and yes, there've been compelling activities and good learning, absolutely. But actually, in intensive interaction, we sit down across from them or with them. We may use touch contact, and we are attentive to them. They set the agenda, and we follow their lead. If they vocalize, we might vocalize. There's a very strategic element to intensive interaction, and that's part of, I guess, the professional development span of the work. There are strategic ways of thinking about this work, but it is based on the infant caregiver model, as I mentioned before. So we're really looking to see what they can do, and we join them in that, whether it's a form of vocalization, as I say, whether it's a sort of simple touch game they might be enjoying with a radiator on the wall. They might enjoy banging that, we'll bang that alongside them. And what we're doing is we're intriguing them to us. We're saying to them, we are like you, we are with you. And through that process, what we get is all those fundamentals of communication, which I briefly touched on before. Other elements of that would include things like learning how to control your arousal levels. So we are moderating the session in a sense. If we go high in enjoyment and excitement, we will support the learner gently down just through ways that we know that they are to reduce their arousal levels. So all sorts of benefits will come from this work. As I said, it happens naturally in the first 3 years of a person's life. We work hard to explain it and support it because people don't go back and think about the first 3 years of their life. Obviously, why would they? How could they? But it is fundamental. And if you have had a little bit of a roadblock through the complexity of your disability, then you are really needing that time and that consideration. And as Galena was saying when she started the work, the learners previously perhaps weren't engaged with the adults in the room on the same way. Yes, there were good interactions and nice relationships with the staff and the learners, but it was on a different plane, different level, whereas Galena went in on where the students are at and worked with them using what they had in their kit A, explored that, expanded on it across sessions and across. What you get is this wonderful development of interest, engagement, and realizing when the learner is in the room that actually that person, I like that person, I trust that person, and I understand that person, which perhaps previously wasn't there before. We can, I think, be a bit mechanized as people around complex learners. We feed them, we look after them, we care for them, we even love them. But are we meeting them on the level we need to really engage them in intensive interaction? And that is what it's all about. Absolutely.
Simon speaking. Thanks, Keiron. Yeah, like there is a common theme throughout the disability world, and it is improving, but the historical view is it's a very matriarchal way of caring for disabled people, and that we need to protect them and to ensure that we provide an engaging life for them and keep them well, which is good. But what you're talking about as a model is that you meet them where they are, and you, through mimicking and engaging with whatever they are enjoying at that present time, is saying whatever you are doing right now is valuable to us. It is, I am treating your action, your vocalization as something that I'm interested in and has value, and so that then creates that interaction and that foundation to increase communication. Because as soon as somebody is interested in what you're doing, of course it's a natural instinct to then involve that person more and to deepen that level of engagement. So I mean, from a person who hasn't had any formal understanding of what it's trying to achieve, it makes complete sense on how it operates just from this brief interaction. And I guess the question is my sort of layman's description of what's going on reasonably close?
Thanks, Simon. Keiron speaking. Actually, sometimes it's better because it's been up here. I've had my brain sort of expanded by intensive interaction over 20 years now. It's changed me as a person. I think it's made me a more in touch person with certainly the people in my life and certainly with myself. You're absolutely right. It is, you mentioned the word imitation, so mirroring or imitating the actions, the gestures, the vocalizations of our adults or complex young learners is a big buy-in. We are attracted to those people that represent something of us, and you can use sort of psychology or sort of behavioral psychology, not so much behavioral psychology perhaps, but you can use sort of those psychological backgrounds to look at how people are in society. And when you see people who are friends, when you see people who are family, they are mirroring each other, or there's a mutual adjustment between each other all the time. So what I found out through intensive interaction, the whole world is connected, and people seem to have forgot about that we are mirroring each other all the time, we're on the same level, we're using the same lexicon of language, we are sharing the same topics of conversation, and that is no different from intensive interaction. It's just that we're not using words. We're using mannerisms, we're using facial expressions, we're using proximity, being close to each other, we're using nice social hand contact. And through all of that process, and it is a process rather than direct teaching, this a wonderful understanding of phatic communion or phatic communications happening. How do we teach our complex learners, our adults, complex adults, to be social, to understand the social world? It's not a Mark Barber, who's, I would term my educational mentor, calls it high stakes teaching without a manual, because we're not going in there with a directive. We are not the experts when we go into an interaction. The child or the adult is. We're going into their world. And that's what I also really find very engaging about it, is the reciprocity. We are the learners as much as the learners. What are you doing? What are you about? What is meaningful to you? How do I get into your world? How do I get you to see me so that you can see others, so that I can help you to be part of this world? We know that, or this is what I say, the access to quality of life in the world is through other people. It's not through isolation. It's not through objects. It's not through doing something in your own world by yourself. It is through being with people. I doubt that there's anyone who could disagree with that concept. So as I say, I think it's an incredibly, people who do intensive interaction, who've had experiences through intensive interaction are, I would say, forever changed. And that would be true of Galena and myself. And you can't unsee that. You can't look at a person the same way, and perhaps use other methodology without considering intensive interaction as the focus for who you are as a person when you're trying to interact with people who need that extra support. And you really want to help them to understand that it is good to be in the world. It is good to be with people. Yeah, it's very important to us beyond just our work, but in regards to how we think about life and how we think people should be supported.
Simon speaking. Keiron, you said something there that I think is really important, just to reiterate. You said about the fact that, yourself in this conversation, you're not the teacher, you're the learner. You're trying to learn about this person. And then you said some really profound, try not to butcher it. It was, you were talking about, what is it that I need to learn to help you see me so that I can help you see others? And I think that, like, I got the goosebumps when you said that, because I think that's the methodology and the practice and the reason for it in a nutshell, right? It is a person learning about a person with these communication issues, learning what it is to be that person, to see that person, to help them see you, and then help them see each other, see everybody else. I think that right there is a very profound way of summarizing it. I just wanted to really highlight that part. But what is it like to see really transformational change in somebody that you've engaged in intensive interaction with? Have you got some examples of people at the school that you've really seen some awesome transformation?
Yeah, excuse me. Keiron speaking again. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, absolutely. Galina had started to speak about the learners just before in regards to, she was speaking about a student who has Angelman syndrome, which is quite a difficult complexity to have. It means that you really struggle with your attention span. It means that you are sort of moving from one sort of moment to the next, and it's hard to connect those moments. To see that learner move from maybe, just trying to think, Galina could say this better than I'm sure, let's say a minute and a half of attention, or even less than that, to being in a 30-minute session and having a fairly solid connection through that whole session. When I say session, a session of intensive interaction. And seeing then the offshoots of that, of them looking at people when they come in the room, of them offering sort of what we'd almost consider common sort of social ways of being, holding a hand out to connect with a person, smiling, being literally in the space with the person, as opposed to being confined to their own world. If you can't understand people, if you don't really even know how you are as a person, then you're in a world of isolation and you are completely cut off from the world. And that's what we've seen. And I've worked for a number of years with learners similar to Galina's current learners, and seen that process as well. Some learners, talking about in schools, because that's where we've predominantly worked, will come alive. They will start vocalizing, looking towards people, reaching out towards people, because suddenly they know we speak the same language. I can talk to you. I can attract you to me. I can have an interaction with you that feels enjoyable. And I'm not just lost in a sort of freewheeling, or as Mark Barber calls it, a free-falling state of existence where everything is abstract, where time is just to be filled with things that I do to myself, by myself. But actually, I can be with people, and I can start to understand what it is to be a learner or to be a social being. And those two things, being a social being is the first conduit to any other learning. And as I've said earlier, if you don't have that first learning in place, if you are not able to socialize, if you're not able to be connected to people, then everything else is a waste of time. That's the way I feel. You can do wonderful learning, you can resource and provide great lessons and stuff, but if the student doesn't really understand what it's like to be a person, what it's like to be with people, when I say what it's like to be a person, what it's like to be a social person or an engaged person or a connected person, then you're really just wasting your time. And as a teacher, my first year, luckily I learned that lesson very quickly. 2006, I found out about intensive interaction, and from there, my learners went from being sort of isolated, pretty hard for me to figure out. I felt a bit foolish as a teacher. I didn't really know what I was doing, to being fully, not to being engaged with us, to sharing the world with us. And as I say to people, I was in a couple of schools down in Christchurch last week. That's why I'm still banging on about it 20 years later. And I'm still endlessly fascinated by it. The fascination has not decreased. In fact, it's increased as I've learned more about intensive interaction over the years.
Simon speaking. Thanks, Keiron. So if you're speaking to somebody who's watching this, who's gone, oh, I think there is a real opportunity to implement this in my own life, is there a way they can get in touch with you and get the value from you in person, or is there a place that you can direct them to do some self-learning? What would you suggest for those people who are just becoming aware of this as a possibility?
Yeah, there is some there's some good stuff online. Anything by the Intensive Interaction Institute is worth checking out. So that's Dave Hewitt and a few of his colleagues, Graham Firth and Dave Hewitt. And then there's Mark Barber, Intensive Interaction Australia. So anything online, you can go, I think it's to www.intensivinteraction.co.uk. There's some great resources there and some good information there. The other thing I would really recommend in 2025 as being a really good up-to-date modern tool for finding out about intensive interaction is a podcast that is Mark Barber. He's, as I say, he's my educational mentor. And he's talking to two speech language therapists, and it's called Talking Without Words. And if you go on that, I'm not sure if there are other, I don't think there's other podcasts called that, but you will see the intensive interaction logo come up. It's pretty clear. It's got the words intensive interaction in it. Have a listen to those. Those are mind-blowingly good. And the other thing is I am working with schools. So I would say if you've got a child in school, talk to your school and say, is there any provision for intensive interaction in the school? If there's not, they might want to seek me out, and they can do that. I can leave my email with you, or I can say it quickly now. It's khubrick@gmail.com. Hopefully that will go into the notes somewhere. I'm interested to see what avenues I can do to support intensive interaction past the model I'm doing at the moment. So if enough people are interested, perhaps I could work with Disability Connect or with you, Simon, or however it works, to look at doing some sort of seminars, to talk about the work, to show some videos. But otherwise, simply, and sorry, there's a roundabout way of saying this, learn to spend time and be in the moment with your person, and learn to enjoy what they're doing and join in with them doing that. There's a few caveats to that. As I say, if it's self-interest behavior, or I don't know if I said that yet, if it's self-interest behavior, if it's sexualized behavior, don't do that, obviously, but do the things you can join in with them. If it's vocalizations, if it's, as I did with that learner just recently, if it's grabbing a piece of grass and flicking it alongside them, if it's simple, nice touch, if it's some sort of sequence of behavior they enjoy, running and tapping a fence and running back and forth, do that with them. You'll find that this growth of engagement can happen quite quickly. Suddenly that person thinks, oh, I've got someone like me, and this is something that's never happened before. So if you're at home with your with your young person or your adult, just the one thing we say is be in the moment. Learn to be in the moment. We're very fast-paced creatures. We're very culturally complex. We're always thinking about what's for dinner, when am I going to pay that bill, what should I get for Christmas. We learn to we need to slow ourselves down. We learn to and be in the moment and appreciate. And if you can do that, you can really also appreciate an amazing amount of things beyond that. You can start to see the world in a completely different way, and you can start to see the world through the lens of the person you're working with. And that is the great reward of intensive interaction for the is seeing the world beyond what we've got used to, which is our very culturally complex, contextual ways of seeing the world as fully sort of sophisticated, sort of upwardly mobile human beings, and learn to really appreciate some good natural ways of being with the person that you're with. And that will foster that growth of engagement and connection. And it's in some ways, it's very simple. Like all good things I like to think in the world, it's equally simple and complex at the same time, but mostly it's enjoyable.
Simon speaking, wonderfully surmised at the end. Thank you. I would say it's equally as simple as it is profound. I think it's more profound than complex, but I understand what you're trying to say there. That it is simple actions that lead to really important transformations and improvements in somebody's quality of life and their perception of themselves and the world around them. Like you said earlier, we're social animals, we're social beings, and if you weren't taught how to be social from the beginning, it makes your day-to-day life missing some really important context, and that assistance in being able to connect with your peers. So yeah, like I said, very simple, but is so important. I just want to say a massive thank you to you both, Galina and Keiron, for coming on. This has been a wonderfully interesting conversation, and I'm sure we can have another one sometime shortly and dive even deeper or talk about some other areas that we may have missed out on. But yeah, a massive thank you to everybody who came along and watched. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Any final words, Keiron or Galina, before we go?
Thanks, Simon. Keiron speaking again. Just thank you for having us on board. I think, yeah, as I say, if you've just heard Intensive Direction for the first time, have a look it up, watch some videos online. As I say, the Institute is the place to go. I would recommend the II Institute because I do have to be careful and say that there might be some variations out there that might not stick to the II principles that have been around for 40 odd years now, that certainly I'm an advocate for, and Galina is as well. So yeah, just connect, take the time, be in the moment, see who they are and join them in it. It's pretty simple and it's very profound.
Simon speaking. Galina, any final words from yourself before we go?
Well, in terms of the resources and how to get connected, I just can add that we recently started building up our own library, our own resources, and they are very thoughtfully pre-selected by Keiron, and they are also divided into levels. So we have quite a few interesting articles for those who are still newbies, those who are beginners, and we will be very happy to share our resources very soon.
Simon speaking. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody who joined in and watched along. I hope you found something worthwhile implementing in your own life. And I will see you all again same time next week. Ka kite.